Sacred Sites with Steve Ray. Here on Morning Joy, where truth matters.
Yes, welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey, and welcome back to Sacred Sites with Steve Ray, where we get to explore the holy and historical significance of sacred sites around our beautiful world. And our guide, Steve Ray. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Keith. I know the answer to that trivia question. Can I win my own book? Please.
You know, I don't know the rules. Tim's shaking his head yes, so why not? Yeah, you can play.
I sent that book into you guys last week and signed it for you because I like what you're doing and contribute to your show as much as I can. Well, we got a lot to do today, and we ended up last week with St. John and Mary going to the island of Patmos. Mary didn't go with him. He just saw her in a vision there. But today we're going to go to Ephesus, and I was going to talk about St. Paul in Ephesus and kind of travel along with him in a week, but there's just no way. So we're going to split it up into 2 weeks and do Paul in Ephesus today and next week, and then us in Ephesus, what it's like for us to arrive on the third week. So let's get started. Well, first of all, this was 2,000 years ago, and traveling was very different back then. And, for me traveling now, I'm almost just shy of 3 million miles with Delta Airlines, and my wife too. And probably by the end of this year, next year, we'll both be 3 million miles with Delta. And but Paul didn't have those advantages. He either went by ship, which was dangerous, or he walked, and that was rough. So today we're going to Ephesus. It was a city of about 250,000. That was a huge city. It was the capital city of Asia Minor, and all the roads led to Rome. But if you were in this area, all the roads led to Ephesus because Ephesus was the major port city, 250,000 people. That was a huge city even back in those days. Rome was about 1 million people, so that gives you an idea of how big Ephesus was. And it was like spokes to a wheel, the roads, 250,000 miles of primary roads that Rome built, 8 feet wide, by the way, so their soldiers could march in procession down those roads. And we've walked down those roads in many places with our groups. But I'm going to tell you how big Turkey is. Turkey is the land. I sent you a map, by the way, of the 300 miles that Paul walked across Turkey of today, we called Asia Minor in the Bible. But I'm going to tell you how big it is because all of you will then understand the size of Turkey or Asia Minor. It's the size of Texas. That's how big Asia Minor is, or Turkey of today is roughly the size of Texas. And it's got a lot of mountains in it too, and hot plains, and there's no hotels. There's no places to stay. Whenever you go somewhere, you have to find people. This is 300 miles from Antioch. It says that he left that area, and then he went down to Jerusalem, and then he went from Jerusalem up to Antioch, which would be a 3 or 4 days walk. Now he's leaving Antioch, which today, by the way, is called Antakya. We'll take you there eventually too, but not today. And Antakya, he travels west. 300 miles across Turkey, and that's a rough travel. I'm just going to read what it says. He describes his travels. I can't describe my travels like this, but his are. He said, I was on frequent journeys, in danger from rivers. Why? Because there's no bridges. You have to find places to get across, and it would be rough to get across rivers back in those days. They didn't have bridges like we do today. I was in danger from robbers, danger from my own people. We're going to talk about that in a minute, why his own people. Danger from Gentiles, dangers in the city, dangers in the wilderness, dangers at sea, dangers from false brothers, and toil and hardship, and through many sleepless nights, and in hunger and in thirst. Now, I travel kind of in luxury, and we go to the lounges at the airport, things like that. But boy, just imagine 2,000 years ago what it was like. There's no phone calls, no emails, no internet to make arrangements to set up hotel rooms when he gets to Ephesus. He just arrives. And that is not an easy way to travel. That's why the Bible, by the way, talks so much about hospitality. 7 times in the New Testament, it tells us to be hospitable, especially to the brothers and to our families and to those who are our brothers. In Hebrews 13, it's really fascinating because it says that we are to be hospitable because sometimes you have entertained angels unaware. So you invite people into your home, but you don't realize they're angels. What's he talking about? Paul is referring to Genesis 18, where Abraham invited the three guests to his home. They were angels. They were actually the Lord himself. So Paul travels through Asia Minor, the size of Texas, arrives in Ephesus, and there's only one verse to explain it. And he went across the upper country and arrived in Ephesus. Understatement of the year, because how many days did it take him to travel across there? 300 miles divided by 20 miles in a day. So somebody out there who's better at math than me can figure that out. 300 miles by 20 miles a day. And it only says it in one sentence. He traveled across the upper country and came to Ephesus. Well, he would always look for a synagogue because they didn't have plans ahead of time. So Paul, now he walks in. By the way, he's got cracks in his heels. His heels are split and bleeding. And I know this because when I filmed my life of St. Paul, I wore sandals everywhere. And I had comfortable Mephisto sandals made in France. He did not have comfortable sandals. And that's what they were. You know how many times it says, even John says, I'm unworthy to remove the sandals from his feet. And by the time I was done filming Paul in a month in 6 countries, my heels were all cracked and bleeding and sore. My feet had blisters all over them. And I can put myself in Paul's place. Arriving in Ephesus, he's hungry, he's tired, he hasn't had a shower or a bath in days. He probably smelled bad. And he's going with these fellow workers. He arrives, and the first thing he would do in arriving in Ephesus is look for the synagogue, because the Jews had a special society. They were all over the Roman Empire, but they took care of each other. They were special. And Paul, it's kind of funny because they'd always say, oh, here's a fellow Jew, come on in, until they found out what he was teaching. And then they'd kick him out and beat him up and send him away after beating him and whipping him. But he found a synagogue, and it says that he is in danger from his own people. That's exactly what he means. He's in danger of the Jews. Not at first. They would always welcome him when he arrives in Ephesus. But once they got to know him and he started preaching, they say, wait a minute, you're preaching against Moses. You're preaching against the temple. And all of a sudden, Paul knew that now he was in hot water and they were going to kick him out. So Paul, he knew that this was a huge city when he arrived, and he had immediately tried to find the Christians or the Jews, and certainly he does. And it says that he went right away and he found the believers. That's a good thing, because now he knows he has a bed. He knows he has food because they're going to take care of him. So he is arriving there, and he's, like I said, tired and so on, and he's coming up the harbor road. Usually, I've arrived in Ephesus in several ways. I've come by land, I've come by sea. But these guys, Paul also arrived in Ephesus once by sea, and he came up the harbor road. This time he's coming through the other way, coming in from the back. But let me describe the harbor road, because this is the way most people arrived in Ephesus. Is the harbor road was a massive road, and it was coming up from the harbor. You get off the ship and you come, and immediately you would see the huge temples, but also the huge theater, which holds 24,000 people. Paul spent 2 years in Ephesus. And it says, because that everybody heard the gospel, Jews and Gentiles alike in all of Asia. That's like Guadalupe Radio being there. And in 2 years, all of Texas heard the word of God and became aware of the word of God, because Guadalupe Radio made it the size of Texas. Everybody in the whole state heard it. So Paul is there for 2 years, and he stays with the people there. And then he comes up Harbor Road. There's huge pillars with candles. These aren't candles. These are huge torches, and 2-story shops. And the ruins of those are still there today. You can still see them as you walk up Harbor Road. And it would have been magnificent. It's like walking down a major street of a city, but maybe even more elegant because of these huge towers with burning torches and all of these lit up buildings. And you'd come up and you'd see the big theater. Maybe there was a play going on or something as he arrived. And also just to the left is a brothel too. But Paul would have never, he told Timothy, flee from youthful lusts. Don't be going into the brothel. Stay away from that kind of thing, because in ancient times it was wicked. In fact, there is, even as you come up Harbor Road, and boy, I'm running out of time already. This is tough, you guys only giving me 10 minutes. When I take my pilgrims there, I get to spend a whole lot more time in Ephesus than this. But anyway, so there's even an advertisement for a brothel when you're coming up the main road. There's a stone, and on the stone there's a face of a pretty girl, and above her is a X or a cross looking like this, and there's a left foot, and there's a heart describing love. If you want the love of this pretty girl, left foot turn left just ahead. And guess what? There was a brothel up there. And this is why Paul, in the middle of a very pagan and ancient culture, there was a lot of wickedness. And so he is always telling us to be moral, telling us to avoid things like that. Like if there would have been pornography today, there would have been passages in the Bible about avoiding pornography and avoiding all of these sexual lusts. And Paul, he just had blinders like a horse, and he would just go straight ahead and nothing would stop him. Well, anyway, there's also the beautiful library of Celsius, the third largest library in the world. And so Paul has now arrived in Ephesus, and I see that I'm almost out of time. So we've arrived in Ephesus. We've gone the journey. We've gotten an idea of what it's like for Paul to travel. And he's found a group of folks there who are Jewish. He's going to stay with them, and he's going to convert a lot of people. And we'll continue next week because I ran out of time.
Well, that was, I mean, thank you so much for giving us like that incredible visual of arriving in Ephesus. Once again, so cool. Thank you again, Steve. And if you're looking for more Steve Ray, make sure to visit CatholicConvert.com. But very much so looking forward to next Monday and continuing this journey to Ephesus with St. Paul. So thank you so much again, Steve.
You're welcome. Talk to you next week.